Okay, welcome back, everyone. This is Invisible Not Broken, and I've been really excited about this interview. I think we've been trying to get this scheduled since August. But Scott Danforth wrote an amazing book about one of my favorite historical figures. And if you don't know, I also run a separate podcast for kids that's a history podcast. So I do a lot of research into very cool people in history. So I could not resist getting him on air. So we're going to be talking about your book, which is called An Independent Man, Ed Roberts, The Fight for Disability Rights. And I thought I knew who he was, but during my research for this interview, I found out so many amazing things. So I cannot wait for you to tell me about this. But tell me about this. Tell me what led you to want to write about this. This is not a very well-known man, which is heartbreaking.
Well, he should be, and I think that's what I realized. I started doing some research about his activist group in the late 60s on campus at University of California, Berkeley, and they were the Rolling Quads. If you can imagine a group of hippies in wheelchairs and zooming around campus and causing trouble and
I have new life
protesting.
goals right now just from that sentence. This is my new life goal.
Yes, yes, yes. I think they shocked people because it just isn't what proper disabled people did.
We
But
need to talk about that term later.
I interview, I did research on that. I wrote an academic article on it, and then I thought there are no biographies of Ed Roberts. Not only Ed Roberts, but if you look around, there's really a lack of writing available, books available. You can find some articles about, Justin Dart or Judy Heumann, you name your favorite disability rights leader, and we ask, can the schools teach about these people? Well, the teachers can't even read about them. So I thought, I know more about Ed than probably anyone on the planet except his family and loved ones. And I just felt like I better do this. And it took me 8 years. That was an 8-year journey of researching, this man who died in 1995.
Were you able to talk to some of his family or some people that still knew him and worked with him and advocated with him?
Yes,
Tell me about that.
dozens of interviews. I mean, I started right away. I had to get some authorization to do this. So I went up to Oregon and met for a few days with his brother Mark. I went to Berkeley and met with his mom Zona, who was still alive at that point. Met with Joan Leon. Joan was his right hand person, his right hand woman who really organized him and kept him on track and did the writing for him for decades. All his central people were very encouraging. They gave me interviews, of course, but they were very, very encouraging. So that kind of set me on my way.
I'm so excited to talk to you about this because this is an issue. I was a disabled kid. I have a genetic disorder, so I barely graduated high school because of limitations. And college was an incredibly painful and exhausting experience. So the idea of disability access for education, it's something that I feel like so many of us have been screaming from the rooftops. And this is what he fought for. And I believe he had polio. Is that correct?
Yes, he had polio as a teenager. Within just less than a week, he was on his back in an iron lung, the giant hulking machine breathing for him. And he spent 18 months in polio units as a teenager, very much in isolation. There's other people around, but he couldn't socialize much. Where he began, and actually where his mom began, because his mom led him initially, was fighting for educational access, both in high school and then at Cal. And I think it's the kind of thing that it's more customary now. Educators aren't surprised by it. Unfortunately, we have to fight every day. We have to kick down doors every day. But at that time, I think the educators were just shocked. They were just, this is not someone who was supposed to be there. Because the idea in the 50s was that somebody with polio, paralyzed, using a wheelchair, it's like you're sick. You're sick, you're weak, you're on the sidelines. Just accept it. Just accept that tragedy befell you and just move out of the way. Like a vehicle in a race and the car runs out of gas or gets a flat tire, just move to the side and let the rest of us live our lives.
I mean, you're talking about a time where we still had the quote unquote ugly laws, which was if you did not fit a particular aesthetic, you were not even allowed out on the street. Please feel free to look that up, everyone, because I think you'll be really surprised. That was a law. And you're talking about the 50s, where like I remember my father would talk about like those photographs of New York where every man had the same hat and you could wear brown, navy blue, or charcoal gray, or maybe black if you're really edgy. And like this is such a conformity thing. And here's someone who refused to allow his physicality to conform into, and he just went barreling, rolling right through all of that. And that really goes back to what you had just said about the good disabled person. Do you want to talk a little bit more about what a good disabled person looks like, especially in the academic world?
Well, I think at that time, the idea they use the word cripple widely, and a cripple should be. It was interesting if you look through newspapers in the early to mid 1900s. There would be articles about these. There's always a crippled. Every place had a crippled children's home, and the children they would tell about an event there or something, and the children were so cheerful. Your job was to make sure that the other people did not feel uncomfortable with your presence. And the only way to do that, because you're responsible for how they feel, right? The only way you could do that was to be overwhelmingly cheerful and jolly, and accept the charitable tidbits that were thrown your way. But as you said, the he's trended toward heavy conformity with certain norms, gender norms, racial norms, etc. And what Ed and his friends at UC Berkeley took advantage of was the countercultural hippie explosion, where sexuality was being questioned, the proper role of women was being questioned, everything was up in the air, and they saw an opening and said, well, if they're questioning everything, all the social order, why not question our proper place in the world? Why not question how society operates?
If I remember correctly in his story, he almost didn't graduate only because he couldn't do PE or his
and driver's ed.
yeah.
And driver's ed, those two. And the administrators at his high school, I mean, when I wrote the story, I said, how am I going to tell the story and make these people sound real? It sounds like a joke.
I mean, this new administration's really helping you with like
it is.
adding disbelief.
That's true. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is really helping with all this.
Sorry, I need more coffee.
Now that I realize that circumcision and Tylenol both cause autism, I think these were...
Everyone who is listening to this, we are joking. We are being snarky and sarcastic. Snarky. If you are in another country, yes, this is all real. Here in the United States, we have a very international audience. If you're listening to this, you're like, Tylenol causes autism? No, it doesn't.
Please
we
don't.
Just have the most insane people running our country right now.
So the difference then was that these administrators in the public schools who were enforcing this rule, they were law-abiding, decent people who went to work every day to do something good. They weren't cruel, foolish fascists. They were really nice people. I mean, that's one of the weird things about disability oppression, is that, if you go read biographies of Martin Luther King, you just end up walking away with, oh my God, the people living in the southern states and the violence and the hate and when you read about disability oppression and disability rights, you realize it's put into place by a lot of really quote unquote nice people. I think it's incredible that it works that way.
It's hard to think about like the difference. Like, I just want to focus over on to the disability side, because I think you do get a lot more of that aspect of people who just think they're helping.
Yes.
Especially when I look at things like groups like Autism Now, I try to not assume malice. I try to assume you only know what you know. A little hard with that group, but still, like it's a lot of people who think they're doing the right thing without actually talking to the people involved, and which is why I wanted to talk a little bit more about the independence. And one of the things that, he had fought for, it seems like his entire thesis of his life was to fight for the ability to have an independent life as a disabled person. Now, you got to interview his brother and his mother. It's really hard for family members to allow independence in disabled children, teenagers, and young adults. I'm almost 50, and I still feel infantilized by not only the world, but my most well-meaning family members. And it's very frustrating. How did they help? Did they help him, or was it how did this work? Because it's really hard for kids, especially then, to be able to push forward.
His parents, and especially his mom, they were no nonsense people. They were not people. I mean, I think they were caring, but they weren't. His mom, Ed, got home from the hospital. He was a teenager living in an iron lung in the living room. The high school is across the street in Burlingame, California, just south of San Francisco. His he's going to high school by a two-way audio hookup that we would find technologically interesting now. And his mom realized, as long as Ed is living in the living room, I'm stuck. I'm going to be here taking care of him for the rest of my life. She basically pushed him out the door. I mean, she pushed him. You're going to school. Your brother's in the high school across the street. The two of you are going. And Ed was scared to death. He thought everyone was going to stare at him. And he was right. They all stared at him. But his mom, no, it was the opposite, really. His mom pushed him. And I think she wanted to get to have a life. And I think she knew it was best for him to get out in the world. It was a strange idea. It was unusual, but she pushed him. And he did it. I mean, he went and he got stared at, and strangely enough, he got used to it. At first, for instance, he used to, for the high school newspaper, he covered the football games, but he wouldn't actually go in the stadium to go to the games because he didn't want everyone staring at him. So he and his dad parked their car at the end of the football field outside the fence, and Ed would watch the games, from beyond the end zone. Not a very good view. And after a while, they said, "Well, let's just go. We're going to go." And at first, they all stared, but then, after a while, they got used to, hey, this is the guy in the wheelchair who comes every week to the football game. You get used to it. You stop staring so much. So, he and his mom really pushed the envelope.
It's amazing the things that stop us from doing things, like be us disabled, be us anything, be us just being teenagers. I mean, I don't know if you remember being a teenager. I just finished raising teenagers, but the amount of self-consciousness, these poor babies,
Yeah.
it's just so extreme. And once they've done it, it's like, oh, that's something that we can do. That's, it feels very much like that every day in physical therapy for me. Okay, that wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. I love what you said about his mother, because I think that as we talk about disability, our caregivers are an important but very silent part of that discussion. And their own wants and needs are often viewed as almost selfish. It's the coddling can actually be more of a problem than someone who wants to help someone get through life. Also, one thing that you said that I'm really fascinated by, because it's the thing I fought very hard for, especially during COVID. We're still in the middle of COVID, but we seem to have forgotten everything we learned during the start of COVID, was the ability to go to school when you're sick. And his ability to have that two-way radio back in, what was it, the 50s? And here we are with Zoom, and we still can't get students actual educations, even in short-term illnesses like surgeries.
It's actually my own university. We used Zoom during the high COVID, not the lingering COVID. But now, like, I have students with disabilities in my classes, and some of them, I have some with chronic illnesses, and they will tell me, I'm really good this week, or I'm really bad this week. And I offer them, we'll run class and we'll put you on Zoom. When you're not feeling well, you'll be up on the screen, but you'll be with us, and it works. It's this hybrid thing. And the university actually says we can't do it. They tell us it's we can't. Here, I'm announcing I'm doing it. I do it all the time when students are sick,
I
and
don't
and they
understand why they
they
can't.
really can't come to class. I encourage everyone. Physical presence is really valued, but there are other kinds of presence we can work with, and so we do it. But no, the university rules say no.
My rage, absolute biting rage, because it's not just disabled students who need this. There are students who are head of household. There are
Right,
students who have children.
exactly.
There are students who have caregiving. They have jobs. Like, the idea that everyone is living back in a world where there was one person who gave up their entire existence to take care of a whole household is not true anymore. So the idea that we can just I'm sorry, I'm just frustrated because I
But
have a
but
child who's in college experiencing this, who's
and
disabled.
and one of the things that is a problem, and here I'll relate this to Ed and his friends, is that as a student, you're on your own. You're one person, making a request for accommodations against a whole system. And
Hmm.
when in the late '60s with Ed, into the into the 70s. Ed and his friends, there was a whole group. They had a whole, disabled gang, and they did things together. I mean, one of their hallmarks was to work as a group, and you will go much farther in the world if you're banging on doors as a team. Plus, you just feel better. You feel
I mean,
better
we saw that
having
with
your crew
the
with you.
ADA. You had the ADA where you had the entire, how many, was it over 1,000 people went to the Capitol and crawled up the Capitol steps to get the ADA through? Like,
Hmm.
that's so true. We need community. How do we build community, or how did he build community? Because I think
Yeah.
we rely so much on social media now, and that was not what he had. So how did he build community?
So what happened? And I'll say he and others, because there was a whole crew with him, including people like Hale Zukas, who I think is pretty well known. It started. I hate to say, it started with isolation and segregation. The university stuck all these paralyzed students. They didn't have housing for them. They stuck them in a campus hospital, and they gave them a whole wing of a campus hospital, which is like what you would absolutely, and Ed didn't like the idea. It's what you would say, don't do that. They're not patients, they're students. But because the university stuck them all together on a hospital ward, they had a way of uniting. They stayed up late at night having these, rap sessions, as they used to call them, and they radicalized each other. They started realizing, the problems I've been bumping into in my life, all these doors that are closed, it's not me. And it's not you either. They saw the commonalities in their stories. It's the way the system operates. It's the way the culture is. We're not the ones who are making it hard to get around. We're not the ones that are making it difficult to get to class. Somebody else is doing that. And so actually Ed and his buddy John Hessler, another leader, they served on university committees to try to create better access. And this is in the 60s. And the university, took them seriously as they were building more buildings, which, they were still building on the campus of Cal in those days.
I mean, they still are. I just drove past it the other day, and they're still not that accessible.
It's interesting how one thing I noticed is you almost reach a certain point where you feel like, oh, we've made progress. And then everyone takes a victory lap, and then there's like a default. You know what I mean? You really have to stay vigilant. You really
It's a
have to stay on top
frustrating
of
thing,
things,
but yeah,
or they back up. They back up quickly.
I mean, we're seeing that right now, like
Yes, to
world, real time.
it's frightening how you can lose what you already gained. And I think sometimes people ask me, what would Ed say today? I think he knew you always had to fight,
Yeah.
but I think he'd be shocked. I think he'd be shocked at the cruelty and the ignorance that is fueling what's happening now. It's not just people who kind of don't care, don't pay attention, or are not well informed. It's
Mm.
really foolishness and viciousness. And that is weird.
It's a very different fight when you're fighting malice than when you're
Yes.
fighting misinformation.
And Ed dealt with politicians that really liked facts.
What? No, those are negotiable, right? You have your facts, mine.
Was a good thing. Both sides. We always have to remember the ADA was passed by Republicans and Democrats, but a Republican administration.
It is wild. Like, I just watched the clip of Mr. Rogers talking to the Senate to get funding for PBS, and had everyone in tears, and just I forgot who the leader of the Republican Party was at the time, but he said, "You've got your funding." And it was like, wow, it's such a different concept. Instead of like, it would be better to feed everyone, even the people who could afford to eat, than to feed no one. Like, it's such a different idea. Anyway, I'm so sorry. I'm so good at getting off topic. This is entirely me with the attention span of a mayfly and with serious addiction issues. I would be really wondering what his concepts would be about the technologies that we now have, because we have technologies that would change everything. We actually could make the education completely accessible. We have virtual reality. We have robotics that could go into a class with the student's face on even. We have full virtual reality classrooms where you can write on boards and you can have everyone in the classroom. You can do a hybrid of these things. You can do what you're doing. I wonder what he would think of that being available and then denied.
So first, Ed loved the technology. So a couple of things he did. He accessed all the helpers he could. A lot of folks at Stanford that he worked with. He made sure that he had, because he was in on the kind of early power wheelchairs. But Ed made sure that he had the deluxe, screaming tires, lights and flashing. He had the deluxe. He had the Ferrari. But the other thing he did, which was pretty cool, I think it was some folks at Northwestern University developed, that the sip and puff technology where you basically have a little straw in your mouth, and I'd have to use it to know how to explain it, but you can blow into it, or you can draw out, and that's like a switch.
Hmm.
And he had when he went to Sacramento, he was the Department of Rehabilitation director for the state of California under Jerry Brown, early Jerry Brown, 1975. And he brought in people and they set up his entire house so that he could turn lights off and on, answer the phone, answer the door, all these things just from a little straw in his mouth. I mean, he loved that stuff. So I think he would be very fascinated and interested in everything we can do to push forward and making sure that we not only keep developing this cool stuff, but that we get it out to people. It's only as good as people's access.
So was he the one who helped with creating the Center of Independent Living?
So, the Center for Independent Living in Berkeley, which was the first independent living center, many of us realize there are over 400 of these that are funded by the federal government around the country, an incredible resource. And there's a bunch in other countries, Canada, Japan, Australia, many places have these. The first one in Berkeley. Now, I'm not going to tell the whole story from the book because you'll have to go read it, but Ed was the second director, not the first.
Oh, I had that wrong. Okay, thank you.
It's widely said that he was the founder. Yes, his bunch of friends, the Berkeley, hippie disability team, founded the center, but it was falling apart. It had very little money, and there was a scandal that I won't go into because it's a little bit juicy. But Ed swept in, and he with Joan Leon really became a fundraising team, and they went out and within 18 months, they raised over $1 million.
How did they do
And
that?
my
Did they
God,
do you, basically asking you is what would he want us to do to pick up his legacy? Because the Center of
pick up his
Independent Living
legacy.
is struggling right now. They need more money. They need more voice. They need more eyes on them. So what can we do to pick up his legacy? How did he get that money? How do we move forward with what he wanted us to do?
I don't know whether his tactics would work today,
That's fair. Things have changed so much. Like
right?
when you're talking about his wheelchair and you're talking about going to Stanford or Berkeley, I can't afford to send my child to Berkeley. That's now what, 60,000,
Yeah,
40,000 a year?
yeah. And Ed's, he grew up in a kind of a working class family. His dad was a railroad man, a union guy. Mom stayed at home. These were not
Different
wealthy
world.
people.
Yeah, no, but back
They,
in the day, you could have a house in Burlingame and
yep.
not be an Apple number 2 employee.
It was a different world. His strategy, and Joan Leon was with him. They would go see. Now they worked on federal grants too, so bringing in federal dollars. But also they would go see the heads of these big foundations, kind of charitable foundations. And I think these foundations were just shocked to see a man that was, essentially paralyzed from the neck down, or almost completely paralyzed, in a big wheelchair. It's just not who they expected.
Yeah.
And he felt no hesitation to pull on their heartstrings and play with their guilt. Guilt was a good way to get money. And then they had to show results. They had incredible, one of the great things about the early days at the Independent Living Center, the amount of talent.
Hmm.
People with disabilities came from all over the country to Berkeley. One thing that Berkeley and California had funding for personal assistance, personal attendants, Many states had no money for that. Now in California, we call it IHSS. Back there, they called it, the home care program, but there was a low level of funding, not enough. But, you could actually have someone come and provide some assistance to you in your home. And that wasn't true in many states. And they also found in Berkeley, where there were lots of people rolling around in wheelchairs, it wasn't unusual. You weren't quite so odd. And it was, Berkeley late 60s, it was a bit of a zoo.
I've heard
It was
my dad was at UC Berkeley back then, and yeah, I've heard all the great stories. I missed out on all the fun.
they were protesting everything. There was a lot of drug access. It was an incredible time with, I would say, they're experimenting with freedom, which
That's
in
a
our country,
great way to phrase that.
our country kind of makes sense. I mean, we're supposed to be about freedom. We have to figure out what the heck that means. And they pushed all the limits on, and in some cases in ways that weren't necessarily good for them. But it was just a tremendous place. And people with disabilities came there. They had Cal, so there were lots of students who came out who were brilliant. They just had Judy Heumann. Ed gets on the phone to Judy. Judy was an activist in New York, early 70s. He just called her up. Judy didn't even know who this was. And Ed said, I want you to come out here and work with us. I mean, they actively recruited. He was like a coach putting together the best team.
I don't know. You said that you didn't think that this might work, but everything that you're saying, I think would still work. And if I can just do a little capsulation, tell me if I'm wrong. He built a community. He got the best people who could make the most noise. He went out and saw a system that was not working, the Center of Independent Living, and then brought people in and helped revitalize. Went to the heads of corporations, which apparently is now our government, and talked to them and guilted them, and then showed them results of how this actually helps. I think all this works. I mean, I think what should happen is we need a TV show. Like, this is a TV show. Like, start with the polio, go through him, like the hospital, like dormitory. This is like Hollywood. Are you listening? This would be amazing. I would watch the hell out of this. And we need more representation anyway. That, like, yeah.
I often, even in writing the book, I often visualize. I would see scenes as movie scenes, and I
Good to hear that. I do too when I write. I always thought it was weird, but that's good to
I
hear.
would see there are great movie scenes in there. And my fear, I kept thinking, I have two fears. One is no one will ever make a movie of this, which is unfortunate. That's probably the more likely. If they did make a movie, they would make a movie that was schmaltzy, and it would be like the
Me before you.
guy in the iron lung overcomes all obstacles, kind of almost like a. If you ever see the movie Rudy, about the football player
Mhm.
at Notre Dame, that kind of thing, you know what I mean?
The me before you, the we just want to die or get out of our wheelchairs.
It'd be the wrong movie. It would be the wrong, and plus it would over. And I have to say, I try to do this in the book. Yes, the book's about Ed, but it was so many people. There's so many people, and I tried to hit on all those, stories of individuals who were activists, who fought and fought and fought, who, will never have a book about them. There's so many people like that, and it it's just amazing how many people fought for disability rights, through the 70s and 80s.
Was there anything in your research, because you got to interview people who knew him and knew the other people who were leading this, and probably got to interview some of the people who stood next to him leading this. Was there anything that surprised you?
Yeah, there's a few things, I guess. One was there was sort of a mythology built, like a folk mythology around Ed, as if he did everything himself. And one one interview I did early with I won't name the name, just with one of the leaders in the Berkeley disability community, and he told a story, and then afterwards I said, from what in my information, Ed really didn't do that. It was some of his friends, and then this man said, I think I do that quite a bit. I think I say that Ed did it when really we all did it, or some of Ed's friends were the leaders. There were so many people involved, and even like for instance the ADA. Ed was really in the back seat. He was really not on the front lines by the time the ADA fight happened in the late 80s. If you think of it was a Republican administration, a bunch of Texans, these are the last people that wanted a lefto Berkeley cannabis smoking hippie. Now he and Judy Human, they literally trained Justin Dart. I mean, he came to Berkeley to learn about disability rights, and they taught him, and he was talented, and he became the leader, and an incredible leader. He deserves books about him and a movie too.
Are you be writing that book?
No, at this point, I'm just tired.
Like, no, I'm fine. No shade there. I totally understand. I mean, you've been writing this for 8 years. That's not a small amount of your life.
No, I have, and yes, so no, I'm tired. This was fun. This has been fun. What else? So your question was about what surprised me. I think too. There's a story. One friend of mine told me that in Berkeley, people. I don't have the expression right, but there's an expression that women made the movement. That women made it happen, and in a way, there was a sexism to the disability rights movement. There were many male leaders, and there were a lot of women who were actually they're on the phone, they're on the typewriters, they're doing the day-to-day labor. And so there were moments when Ed was celebrated, and I'm not going to say he shouldn't have been, but there were a whole lot of other people, most of them women, who never had a magazine article written about them, never did a TV interview.
Funny how that happens, isn't it? I can think of at least 6 different movements right now that feels very true about.
And you realize, the disability rights movement was, yes, there were all sorts of people involved, but it was dominated by white males in wheelchairs. So there were certain kinds of disabilities which were the kind of showed up among the leadership. Yes, obviously there were blind people and deaf people. There were African Americans, Hispanics and Latinos. They often weren't in the center. They often weren't the leaders.
It's interesting because you're also one of the things that would words are not fun for me today. One of the things is that it's usually women or people with ovaries who have chronic illnesses or invisible illnesses, which aren't as filmable as someone in a wheelchair and can be a little bit easier to overlook. Was that something that you're finding as well?
Definitely. I think it showed up. I would say that if you think about your podcast and kind of the focus on kind of, invisible or chronic illnesses, a lot of those people in the 50s, 60s, 70s, they weren't viewed as having a disability. They probably didn't view themselves as having a disability.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm still the best at gaslighting myself. There is no doctor who can gaslight me better than I can gaslight myself because I grew up with that. And, I even through the 90s, even up until about a year or two ago, I had to Google my disorder for every doctor when I'd walk in because I just had never thought about it. What was some of the hardest parts about writing this book and some of the most joyful? Because this is a lot of research.
Joyful. Ed was fun. Ed was fun to hang. So, to hang around. I know he died in 1995, but I just hung around with him a lot. He rode, he did whitewater rafting. He swam with whales. He swam with dolphins. He just was outrageous. He was so over the top. And that is not me. I'm a bit of a mild guy. And I have to remind myself, go ahead and live a little bit. Ed really reminded people, one of his great messages to people with disabilities, and he made quite a few speeches on this theme, was to take risks. He said that you will be coddled the way you described. You will have people, you better watch it. You're a little fragile. Your body isn't, you've got to you really shouldn't be doing that much. You must be tired. Take a break. No, he was the opposite. He said, take risks, go do stuff. It's good for you and it's good for them to see you out in the world doing this. So
what's the risks you've taken since?
Say that. I'm sorry. Say that again.
What's the risks you've taken since, like, aside from spending 8 years of your life writing a book about this? Like, have you decided to go skydiving?
No. It's still I guess I've mostly enjoyed being in the sidecar along with Ed as he did these. My joy is telling the stories. I'm the storyteller and I get to bring this stuff to other people. No, you realized, you've figured out by now I am not Ed Roberts. So the hard part for me was just, and this is more on the personal side, doing research, is it can be really lonely. It's
Hmm.
interviewing people is fun. That's fun. I enjoy the interviews. I'm kind of a more of an introvert, but I can do that stuff, and I enjoy talking to people. That was great. But the time, the hours and hours and hours grinding it away in the library, in archives, picking through boxes full of letters and papers, and you know, oh my God, it's very lonely. Very. I'm happy to be not done with that.
How do you push through that part? Because that's a hard part for me as well.
You know what I here's what I learned, and I've told my students this because I had to say, I would tell myself in the morning, I am not able to write this book. I am able to do this work today.
Mm,
I have work to do today. I can do today's work. And actually, that's a life lesson for me, which is
that's a good one.
I am not able to do whatever. But you know what? There are things to do today, and I can do them. And I'll do it today. And then the next day I get up, I can do it again. And then after, 1,000 days, I still feel like I can't do it, but I know I can do it today. And then I got,
Right there. That feels like the journey of parenting.
yeah, oh no, it's a journey of many, many things. I know I'm a parent too, which is I can't, in the big picture, I can't do it. But can I do, yeah, I can muddle through this. I can make it through right now.
And that's everything. It's like when you're going through physical therapy, when you're got a new diagnosis, when you're writing a new book, or you're thinking about doing a PhD program. You're so right. If you think about the whole thing at once, it feels so
Yeah,
untouchably huge. But the bite-sized chunks, you just get to the next step again.
right. And even with the writing, I mean, I have, there's a whole book there. I have a few hundred more pages in my computer. They're just not as
How do
good as the
you
stuff
kill
I
your
wrote down in
darlings?
the
How do you
book.
do that? That's so hard to kill your darlings. How were you able to how did that work with you for the editing process of this?
It's hard
And
decisions,
especially
hard.
because it's a biography, like you're responsible. And I don't mean to
My
that's a huge responsibility. This is someone who's not talked about, and you're bringing him to the
Right.
forefront. How are you able to edit him?
Well, there was another thing I realized because I had not written a biography. I had done historical research, but a biography is its own thing. One of the hard things is to learn and learn and learn about a person, but realize that a life doesn't just fall, it doesn't just turn into a story. You know what I mean? All these facts and they don't just make a story. And how do I write this as a story or as a bunch of stories? That was a challenge all along. And then that there's some extra stuff. There's some things I have to decide, I'm not going to tell about that.
How'd you make that choice? What was your
Let me give an example. I'll give you an example without telling too much about what I didn't tell. Ed married, and he and his wife had a child, and he had a son, and then he divorced. He was divorced, and I tell the story. And his wife Kathy, had an alcohol problem, had an addiction, and I tell the story, but I don't go too far down that road in in terms of telling much more about her. I kind of
mm,
left it at that. I only focused on her within how it worked in his marriage and how it influenced him. And then yes, I'm sure there's a larger story to be told about this woman and the rest of her life and her struggles. I didn't. I left it. And I left some stories, on the cutting room floor that would have told more about her just because I didn't feel like doing them. I just
mm,
did not want to, do salacious sort of stuff. I told enough. That was enough to understand how difficult it was for him to lose his wife, to have his son move away, and not be with him every day. And that was the main part. So, there's sort of decisions to be made, lines to be drawn. Um, that was hard, but I knew it was part of doing it.
how is the publishing process for you? Did you find it, or did you already have publishers there,
So,
their agents that?
no, I'll tell you. So I'm thrilled. I'll compliment my publisher, University of California Press. They've been wonderful and helpful. But at first, I wanted, like Random House.
Mm,
I wanted the big, and to get to
big
some of
five.
those, yeah, the big five, you have to get an agent. And, my computer is full of 50 to 75 rejections from agents. I mean, I saw this as a story that the average person walking down the street would be fascinated with. This is a really interesting guy. This is a really interesting fight. This is relevant today. And I was unable to convince a lot of people of that. And I was thrilled when the folks at the UC Press said, "Oh, you've got something here." And, they became the champion for this, which is wonderful. It's just how it works. I don't take it personally. And there's a lot of good stories out there that don't get told because that's just how it goes.
I think one thing that could be screamed to the universe is publishing is not personal, it's business. It's not whether you're good or bad, it's whether they can make the money.
And I did feel annoyed. Here, I'll give you this, not personally, because I just knew, if Ed can and Judy Human can bang into doors to get them open, I can try to get a publisher, It's not that. Okay. But I sometimes felt like I wish these people understood how important this is.
Mm.
And I wish I could do a better job. Not in, I think the book itself, someone reads it, they feel the importance of it. They feel the presence of Ed and the activists. They feel that. But there's a whole other bunch of stuff you have to do to try to sell your manuscript and convince. It's like a sales job.
I mean, it's a totally different skill set.
Oh, it's gross. It's gross. It's gross.
Very much feel that.
Yeah. It's
So I don't know a whole lot about you personally. I tried to do research on you, but you do not have a large social footprint that I could find.
No, I know I don't. I get, yeah, not really.
And cheers to that. I swear it will save your sanity. Don't change that. It is exhausting. But I couldn't find much about your personal history on what would lead you to dedicate so much of your life, your academic life, your research into disability and access. Can you tell me what led you down this path?
So I started, yeah, that was a path. I started as a special educator. I was a special ed teacher. And then originally, when I was a university professor, I was teaching people to become special education teachers. Very quickly in that field, I realized that the field itself, and this was something Ed ran into the field of rehabilitation. And rehabilitation, vocational rehab, is sort of the adult version of special education for kids. And these fields can be too conservative. And they can be dominated by non-disabled experts. Here I am being one of them. So what a pain in the butt I must be. But
You're actually listening to disabled people, so I give you a very large pass.
But I quickly found that I was only interested in the inclusion side of special education. So I worked on inclusion for a number of years, including, running schools where kids with disabilities are not segregated, where they're in the same classes with the other non-disabled kids. But I got tired of that, not because it's not an important goal, but because of the political battle of it. And I get tired of trying to convince people, which seemed to me to be obviously good. So then I thought, what if I told the stories of some victories that already happened? To tell the disability rights victories is to tell of people winning. And I could tell some of those stories, and that'd be great fun. And so that's what sort of swung me over. And I kind of shifted over into, now I'm a disability studies professor, not as involved in special education. And that's been great. Studies is sort of the intellectual wing of the disability activism, is how I would put it. The nerds in the background. And that's been enjoyable. That's been fun. And that's what led me to Ed and to these stories.
So can you give me two different answers? One is the dream. What could we change if there was if we were in a different world, different administration, different everything, what could we change if it was the dream? And what can we actually change right now, dealing with the realities of, we've had most of our grants taken away. Yeah. Any grant, they've been very clear that any grant that is not about a very particular kind of person is not going to even be looked at, will be automatically rejected. So we have to kind of look at the reality. So the dream answer, and then the reality answer of what we can do right here, right now.
The dream answer, I'll tell you, even with all of the achievements, the patchwork of policies at the federal level don't make any sense. We have all sorts of different programs, and they don't. So an example is, if you apply and receive, kind of a income, disability, Social Security income, Now there are questions about how much you can work, and you're receiving this very low level of income. The programs don't work together to support people, in terms of some people do need an income, and I'm not talking about $950 a month. They need a real income. And we need to support people having jobs and an education and careers too. So I wish that we had really serious people in Washington working on making policies work together in a thoughtful way.
What would that be? Like, what kind of, would it be a state representative? Would it be someone who, like, what kind of job would that be?
Right. I think you're right. We need it at the state level, all the legislators at the state level. We need the folks in Congress and the Senate. I mean, right now that they're just spitting at each other. I mean, they're really not working for the common good.
No.
And if you think back to when the ADA was passed, so the Democrats and the Republicans in 1988, 1989, as much as they did political nonsense, they actually sat down and argued and tussled over public policy. What can we do to make people's lives better? So there's my dream. I'm not going to say what they should do, but if the politicians actually work together to try to make people's lives better.
See, what I hear is remove Citizens United. That's what I hear when you say that. Is that
Yeah,
when
you're right. I'm not an expert on some of that stuff, but I think you're right that corporate America has too much pull, and the average citizens do not. And
it took all
certainly,
of the politicians had time to talk to each other, and then Citizens United happened, and they switched from talking to each other to talking to donors, and it just changed the money game completely.
yeah. So money's, we've always had a problem of profits over people, but
Yeah,
now it's profits over people to the extent that it's people hardly exist. I mean, in a way.
yeah. I'll try to keep my terror low.
So what can we do today? That's a good question. I think there's I don't know if we're going to win many victories now. I do think that there's a lot of I really respect, I'll give an example. I think I look at some of the protests in Portland right now, if you follow any of that.
Oh yes,
They
frog. I
have
want a T-shirt with the
yes,
frog on it.
yes, they have humor. They have unity. There's some beauty there. So I think
Mm.
those are the things we have to keep alive. Even if you're not winning, you have to keep alive the basic human heart of what we're doing. We're together. We're funny. We're creative. We're alive. And that all of that is the opposite of fascism. All of that is the opposite of this scourge of Trump. And we have to keep all of that alive, even if we're not getting immediate victories. So I
Joy,
love, I love, I love the
Christians.
frogs.
Yes,
The,
the
I love the
axolotls and the unicorns.
yes, yes. We need all of that. When you see these videos and the ICE agents are all lined up, and then there are all these people lined up behind them wearing the costumes. This is the creativity is really beautiful. So that's all I can think of.
No, I love that, and I think it goes right back to Ed Roberts in his wheelchair with all the lights, and like just be big, loud, beautiful, brave, and remember that whimsy and joy and Bugs Bunnying problems is. Sorry, this is the Labrador. That joy is resistance. Joy is one of the best tools. Bugs Bunnying a problem, when you like two forces meet, you get an explosion. When you Bugs Bunny it, you have a much better chance of solving it.
And Ed really believed in being over the top and very pushy to the extreme.
You're
You know,
inspiring me. I think I want to put like a little like snowplow in front of my wheelchair, just like kind of push people.
snowplow. That's good. That's good. I do like the idea. Like I saw the other day, I was out at night, and there was someone who went by in their wheelchair, and they had these wonderful rainbow lighted wheels. And my wife just shouted out, "I love your wheels." It just was beautiful. And I think that person thought ahead. They said, "I'm going to get these rainbow light wheels." And it was, at night, it was just cool.
I mean, I just went to Renaissance Fair, and someone like my wheelchair was not dressed up. I dressed up. My wheelchair was not. I did not have the energy. But someone else had like a full horse thing, so that they looked like a knight on a horse. I'm like, gotta up my game. I need to like find some way to turn it into like a dragon or something. I need a laser show. Like we need some more inventors to like come in and like make some very cool wheelchair stuff, because we do want them to be fun and pretty. Like they should be cool.
I mean, I'm not the innovator. I'm the appreciator, but I love it. I love it.
On a t-shirt. That's a good t-shirt.
Well, we need an audience.
Audience is important as well as the creator.
And I'm a storyteller. I take that and I go tell the story. I just told you about this, so pass it on.
Well, that's what we can do. And I cannot wait to read this book. I'm really excited about it. I only know bits and pieces about him. I am really excited to also be able to go down some rabbit holes, because I love that you really looked at the teammates, the people who were not the sung and celebrated heroes. And I can't wait to go down those rabbit holes as well. So if you are listening to this, go to our show notes to our website. I will have a link to the actual place where you can buy the book, and a link to all of Scott's, well, no social media, but I think you have a website. Do you have a website? Your book has a website, right?
It's a website, yes.
Okay, I will have everything linked up so that you can just find everything right on our page, and just you can get everything directly. I cannot thank you enough for this time with you. This was such a joy.
Thank you. Thanks. I had fun. This has been great.
You were very good at this, so thank you. Everyone, be kind, be gentle, and whatever it looks like to be fierce. We are now up to 2 episodes a month, so yeah, if you believe in anything, pray for my sanity, and I'll see you all next time. Okay.